The mountains of northern Idaho held their secrets close, wrapped in pine and silence. The kind of silence that pressed against the eardrums, broken only by the whisper of wind through Douglas fir and the distant cry of a red-tailed hawk. For Lieutenant Marcus "Ghost" Rearden, this was exactly what he needed: silence, distance, forgetting. The cabin he'd rented sat at the edge of Timber Ridge, a town so small it barely warranted a dot on most maps. Population 847, according to the faded sign at the town limits. One main street. One diner, one gas station, one church with a steeple that needed painting. It was a place where people came to disappear, and Marcus was very good at disappearing. At 34, Marcus carried himself with the controlled economy of movement that marked career military. 6'2", with shoulders that filled doorways and hands that had been trained to build and destroy with equal precision. His dark hair was cut shorter than regulation required, old habits, and his gray eyes held a flatness that came from seeing too much, too young, too often. He stood on the cabin's small porch, a mug of black coffee cooling in his hand, watching the morning mist burn off the valley below. The air tasted of pine resin and coming snow. October in Idaho. The mountains were already dusted white at their peaks, and the aspens had turned to flame. This was day 43 of his mandatory psychological leave, 43 days since Kandahar. 43 days since the ambush. 43 days since Thor. Marcus's jaw tightened. He forced the memory back down, locked it away in the compartment where he kept all the things that would break him if he let them out. The Navy had given him 6 months to process and recover. The battalion psychologist, a well-meaning woman with kind eyes who had never heard a shot fired in anger, had used words like survivor's guilt and post-traumatic growth and finding meaning in loss. Marcus had nodded in all the right places, said the things they needed to hear, and taken the leave because refusing would have raised flags. But he wasn't here to heal. He was here to exist in the space between missions, waiting for the numbness to feel normal. The sound of a vehicle on the gravel road pulled him from his thoughts. A battered pickup truck, forest green with more rust than paint, rumbled past his cabin. In the bed, 3 dogs stood with their noses to the wind, a German Shepherd mix, a Labrador with a graying muzzle, and what looked like a husky cross. They were alert but calm, tails wagging in the morning air. Behind the wheel, Marcus caught a glimpse of the driver, a woman, late 20s, with her dark hair pulled back in a practical braid. Even from a distance, he could see the way she held herself, the slight stiffness in her left shoulder, the careful way she gripped the steering wheel. He recognized it immediately. Injury, permanent. The kind that changed how you moved through the 24 world. The truck disappeared around a bend, heading deeper into the forest. Marcus had seen it 3 times this week, always early morning, always with dogs. He'd asked about it at the general store when he'd gone in for supplies. That's Dr. Sarah Vance. The elderly woman behind the counter had told him, her weathered face creasing into a smile. Runs Second Chance K9, sanctuary up on the old Morrison property. Takes in dogs, nobody else wants the ones that are too old, too sick, too traumatized. She's a miracle worker, that girl. The woman had leaned in conspiratorially. She's a veteran herself. Army medic. Got hurt bad in Afghanistan. They said she'd never walk again without a cane, but you should see her now. Pure stubbornness, that one. Marcus had nodded, paid for his coffee and bread, and left. But the information had lodged in his mind, a small hook he couldn't quite shake free. Now, watching the dust settle on the road, he took a long drink of his coffee. It had gone cold. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. The sanctuary, dogs nobody else wanted, a veteran who refused to quit. Marcus turned and went back inside. He had another 37 weeks of silence ahead of him. He didn't know that his silence was about to be shattered by a woman who'd found her purpose in saving the broken, and that together they would face an enemy neither of them saw coming. 5 miles deeper into the forest, where the paved road gave way to dirt and the cell phone signal died completely, Second Chance K9 Sanctuary occupied 15 acres of heavily wooded land. The property had once been a summer camp in the 1,972nd. The main lodge still stood, weathered but solid, and 4 smaller cabins dotted the property, each now converted into specialized kennels and rehabilitation spaces. Dr. Sarah Vance limped slightly as she climbed out of her truck, her left leg stiff in the cold morning air. The shrapnel had been removed. The bones had been pinned and plated, but the nerve damage was permanent. On bad days, the pain was a constant, grinding presence. On good days, it was just a dull ache that reminded her she was alive when 6 members of her unit were not. She'd stopped counting good days versus bad days. She just counted dogs saved. "All right, crew, let's go," she called, dropping the tailgate. The 3 dogs leaped down with varying degrees of grace. Bear, the German Shepherd mix, landed solidly and immediately began his patrol of the perimeter, a habit from his previous life as a failed police K9 candidate. He was too gentle for patrol work, the department had said, too hesitant to bite on command. Sarah thought that was exactly what made him perfect. Maggie, the elderly lab, took the jump carefully, her arthritis making her movements slow but determined. She'd been surrendered by a family who didn't have time for an old dog anymore. She'd been at the sanctuary for 2 years now, living out her golden years with dignity and an endless supply of tennis balls. And then there was Luna, the husky cross, with one blind eye and a fear of loud noises so profound that she'd been deemed unadoptable by 3 different shelters. Sarah had been working with her for 8 months. Progress was measured in inches last week. Luna had let a stranger pet her without cowering. It was a victory. Sarah followed them up the path to the main lodge, her keys jingling against her belt. The morning routine was sacred. Feed the permanent residents, check on the medical cases, do the medication rounds, then start the training sessions with the dogs in the rehabilitation program. She had 17 dogs currently in her care. Some would be adopted out once they'd been socialized and trained. Others, like Maggie, were lifers too old or too damaged to ever be placed, but deserving of love and safety for whatever time they had left. The sanctuary ran on grants, donations, and Sarah's VA disability check. It was always one bad month away from closing, always one emergency vet bill away from bankruptcy. She worked 7 days a week, 16 hours a day, and slept in a small room off the main lodge that smelled permanently of dog food and pine cleaner. She wouldn't trade it for anything. Sarah unlocked the lodge and was immediately mobbed by enthusiastic barking. The morning chorus. She smiled, feeling the weight of the outside world fall away. Here, in this small pocket of forest with these broken, beautiful creatures, she had purpose. Her physical therapist, a traveling PT who made house calls to remote veterans like her, had told her last month that she was the most well-adjusted trauma survivor he'd ever worked with. "You found your why," he'd said. "Most people spend their whole lives looking for it. You built yours with your own hands." Sarah hadn't told him that some nights, when the last pain was bad and the memories were worse, she still woke up screaming. She hadn't told him that she'd chosen this isolated property specifically because there was no one close enough to hear. Everyone had their secrets. She just didn't know that her physical therapist had bigger secrets than most. Raymond Colt didn't look like a predator. He looked like success. At 56, he was lean and tan, with silver hair styled in that calculated way that suggested expensive barbers and time spent caring. His suit was charcoal gray, tailored to hide the slight paunch of prosperity, and his smile was the kind that had been practiced in mirrors and boardrooms until it looked almost genuine. He stood on a ridge overlooking the valley, his Italian leather shoes completely inappropriate for the muddy terrain. Beside him, his son Travis Colt, 28 and already showing the soft edges of a man who'd never been told no, held a surveyor's map weighted down against the October wind. "This whole section," Raymond said, sweeping his arm across the vista. 20,000 acres. Timber Ridge Resort and Wilderness Preserve. High-end cabins, a luxury lodge, hiking trails, a spa. We market it to the Silicon Valley crowd tech burnouts looking for an authentic mountain experience. Authentic, Travis repeated with a smirk. With heated floors and private chefs. Exactly. Raymond's smile widened. We'll clear-cut the commercial timber first. That alone will cover the land acquisition costs. Then we build. Soft opening in 18 months, full operation in 2 years. Projected revenue in year 3, $42 million. Behind them, leaning against a black Suburban with tinted windows, 2 men waited with the patient stillness of people who were paid to wait. Wade Riggs and Dale Mosser. They didn't have business cards. They didn't need them. Everyone in the county knew what they were. Raymond Colt's fixers. Wade was the older of the two, mid-40s, with a face that looked like it had been carved from rough granite and left unfinished. Ex-military, though his discharge had been less than honorable. He wore his hair in a buzz cut and carried himself with the rigid posture of a man who missed taking orders. Dale was younger, broader, with the build of a high school football star gone to seed. He grinned too much and talked too loud, the kind of man who peaked at 17 and spent the rest of his life trying to recapture that glory through intimidation. There's just one problem, Travis said, tapping a specific point on the map. This property, 15 acres, right in the center of the development zone. Some woman running a dog kennel. Raymond's expression didn't change, but his eyes went cold. The Morrison property. I'm aware. She won't sell. Lawyer sent back our offer letter with "not interested" written across it in red marker. How charmingly unsophisticated. Raymond took the map, studying the property lines. Who is she? Dr. Sarah Vance. 31. Army veteran, medical discharge, runs some kind of rescue operation for damaged dogs. Travis's tone made it clear what he thought of both the dogs and their rescuer. She's got no family, no money, and no leverage. She's just being stubborn. Raymond folded the map carefully. Stubbornness is just a failure to understand one's position. Wade? Wade pushed off the Suburban and approached. Sir, Dr. Vance needs to understand that her presence is an impediment to progress. Not just her own, but the entire community's. This development will bring jobs, revenue, tourism. One person cannot be allowed to stand in the way of the greater good. It was a speech Raymond had given many times, in many places. He genuinely believed it. He saw himself as a builder, a visionary. The fact that his vision required crushing anyone in his path was simply the cost of progress. You want us to have a conversation with her? Wade asked. I want you to help her see reason. Visit the property. Assess the situation. Make our position clear. Raymond's smile returned. Let's keep it civil. For now. Dale grinned. What if she's got a big scary dog? Then I'm sure you'll handle it appropriately, Raymond said, his tone dismissive. He turned back to the vista, already seeing his resort where dense forest currently stood. Everyone has a breaking point. You just need to find hers. Wade and Dale exchanged a look, the kind of look that said they knew exactly how to find breaking points, and they enjoyed the work. They climbed into the Suburban. The engine purred to life, expensive and powerful. In the valley below, invisible behind the trees, Sarah Vance was teaching Luna how to trust again. She had no idea that trust was about to become a luxury she couldn't afford. The physical therapy session was scheduled for 2 o'clock, the same as it had been every Tuesday and Friday for the past 6 weeks. Sarah had come to appreciate the regularity. In a life defined by chaos, barking dogs, medical emergencies, financial crises, Marcus Rearden's punctuality was oddly comforting. He arrived at 1:58, as he always did, driving a nondescript rental SUV. He knocked twice, short and efficient, and waited. Sarah opened the door, already dressed in the athletic wear required for their sessions, compression pants and a loose tank top that wouldn't restrict movement. Right on time, as always. Old habits, Marcus said, carrying his portable therapy table and equipment bag. He'd been making house calls to her sanctuary for 6 weeks now, ever since the VA had contracted him as a traveling PT for rural veterans. The pay was adequate, the work was straightforward, and it kept him busy. Mostly, it kept him from thinking. They worked in the lodge's common room, which Sarah had cleared of dog beds and toys. The space smelled of pine cleaner and faintly of wet dog, a scent that Marcus found oddly grounding. It reminded him of Thor. He set up the table practiced motions, not looking at her. "How's the pain level today?" "Scale of 1 to 10. 4. Sarah said. "It's been good this week. Cold helps, somehow. Reduces inflammation." Marcus's voice was clinical, professional. This was the space where he was comfortable treating the body as a mechanical problem to be solved. Emotions didn't factor. "Let's start with the assessment, then we'll do the stretching protocol." The session fell into its familiar rhythm. Marcus guided her through range of motion exercises, his hands firm but impersonal as he manipulated her damaged leg. He noted her progress in a small notebook: 15-degree improvement in hip flexion, reduced compensatory movement in the opposite leg, pain response minimal. Through the window he could see dogs in the outdoor runs. Bear was sunning himself on a wooden platform. Maggie was nosing around the fence line. Luna was nowhere to be seen, probably in one of the quiet spaces Sarah had created for anxious dogs. "You're doing well," Marcus said, which was as close to praise as he got. "Keep up the home exercises. Ice after any extended activity." "Yes, sir," Sarah said with a slight smile. Something in her tone made Marcus look up. "I'm not." He stopped. "Sorry. Force of habit. Don't apologize." "I get it." She sat up on the table, rubbing her thigh absently. "Military bearing is hard to shake. I still say 'copy that' when someone asks me to pass the salt." It was the most personal thing either of them had ever said to each other. Marcus felt something uncomfortable shift in his chest, a crack in the wall he'd built. He turned away, busying himself with packing his equipment. That's when they heard it. The sound of a vehicle coming up the access road. Fast. Too fast for the rutted dirt track. The engine's roar echoed through the forest, aggressive and intrusive. Every dog on the property started barking. Sarah was off the table immediately, her limp pronounced as she rushed to the window. "No one comes up here uninvited. Everyone knows to call first. It stresses the dogs." Marcus was already at the door, his body language shifting from therapist to operator in the space of a heartbeat. He recognized the change in himself, the way his senses sharpened, his breathing slowed. Threat assessment mode. The black Suburban skidded to a stop in the gravel turnaround, sending rocks spraying. Two men got out. Wade Riggs emerged from the driver's side, his eyes hidden behind mirrored sunglasses. Dale Mosser came around from the passenger side, grinning like this was the best part of his day. Sarah pushed past Marcus and stepped onto the porch. "This is private property. You need to leave." Wade ignored her. He looked around the property with undisguised contempt at the weathered buildings. The dog runs, the hand-painted sign that read, "Second Chance K, 9 Sanctuary, every dog deserves love." "Doctor." "Vance?" Wade's voice was flat, bureaucratic. "We're here on behalf of Raymond Colt and Colt Development. We have a business proposition. I've already responded to your offer. I'm not selling." "See? That's the thing." Dale had wandered closer to one of the outdoor runs, where Bear was barking frantically. "You don't really have a choice, mister. Colt owns everything around you. You're landlocked. No access road that isn't on his property. No water rights. You're squatting, essentially. I have legal access through the county easement. My well is documented, and my property deed is ironclad. Now get off my land." Wade pulled a folded document from his jacket. "This is a notice of code violations, 23 violations to be exact. Improper kennel structures, inadequate sanitation systems, zoning irregularities. The county inspector will be here next week to verify. Each violation carries a fine of $500 to $5,000. We estimate you're looking at about $75,000 in fines and mandatory improvements." Sarah's face went white. "Those facilities were inspected and approved. I have the paperwork. "Regulations change," Wade said with a shrug. "Can't keep up with every little rule, I guess. Course, mister. Colt is willing to make all this go away. He'll buy the property, cover your legal fees, and even make a generous donation to help you relocate your operation. Somewhere more appropriate. Somewhere that's not in the middle of his resort development, you mean?" "Exactly." Wade smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Marcus stayed in the doorway, perfectly still. He was cataloging everything, the way Wade's jacket hung slightly heavy on the right side, carrying concealed, probably a Glock 19. The way Dale kept his weight on his back foot training, likely military or law enforcement. The way both men had positioned themselves to block the direct route to Sarah's truck. These weren't just corporate messengers. These were enforcers. "I'm not selling," Sarah said again, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "And I'm not being intimidated by fake violations. Now leave, or I'm calling the sheriff." Dale laughed. "Sheriff Tom Brackett? Good luck with that. He and Mr. Colt play golf every Sunday." Wade pulled out a business card, set it on the porch railing. "You have 48 hours to reconsider. After that, things get complicated." He started to turn back toward the Suburban, then paused, as if the thought had just occurred to him. "You know what the real problem is, Dr. Vance? You've got too many animals here. Overpopulation, dangerous conditions, would be a real shame if there was an incident." Dale had stopped in front of Bear's Run. The German Shepherd mix was barking furiously, his body pressed against the chain-link fence. "This one looks aggressive," Dale said. He picked up a rock from the driveway. "Don't," Sarah started forward. Dale threw the rock, hard. It hit Bear in the shoulder. The dog yelped and scrambled backward, his barking turning to high-pitched whining. "Yep, definitely aggressive," Dale said, grinning. That's when Marcus moved. He was off the porch and across the gravel in 3 strides, his body a weapon honed by years of training and sharpened by months of suppressed rage. Every emotion he'd locked away, every ounce of guilt and grief and impotent fury over Thor's death, over his own survival, over the unfairness of a world that let good things die while evil thrived. All of it focused into a single point of absolute clarity. Dale never saw him coming. Marcus's hand clamped on Dale's shoulder, spinning him around. The bigger man had time for his grin to start faltering, time for his eyes to widen in surprise. Then Marcus's fist, precise, controlled, carrying every pound of his body weight behind it, caught Dale perfectly on the hinge of his jaw. The impact made a sound like a hammer hitting meat. Dale's eyes rolled back, his knees buckled. He went down in a heap, unconscious before he hit the gravel. The entire encounter took less than 2 seconds. Marcus turned to Wade, his face utterly calm, his breathing steady. "You were leaving." Wade's hand had moved toward his jacket, toward the gun Marcus knew was there. But he stopped. Something in Marcus's eyes, some absolute certainty of violence, made him recalculate. This wasn't a random veteran with a limp and a dog rescue. This was something else entirely. "You just made a big mistake," Wade said quietly. "No," Marcus replied, his voice like gravel. "You threw a rock at a dog. That was the mistake." Wade dragged Dale's semi-conscious form to the Suburban, shoved him in the passenger seat. Before he climbed in, he looked back at Marcus. "You don't know who you're dealing with." Marcus's expression didn't change. "Neither do you." The Suburban peeled out, fishtailing on the gravel before disappearing down the access road. The silence that followed was immense. Sarah was staring at Marcus, her hand over her mouth. All around them, dogs were still barking. Sensing the violence that had just flashed through their sanctuary, Marcus walked to Bear's Run. The dog was pressed against the back wall, trembling. "Hey, buddy," Marcus said softly, his voice transformed. Gentle. Broken. "It's okay. You're okay." He turned to Sarah. "Is he hurt?" She limped over, her professional instincts overriding her shock. Together, they entered the run. Bear allowed Sarah to examine him, though he kept his eyes on Marcus not with fear, but with recognition. One traumatized veteran recognizing another. "Just bruised," Sarah said finally. "He'll be okay." Marcus nodded. His hands were shaking. The adrenaline was crashing now, leaving him hollow. "Who are you?" Sarah asked quietly. "Really?" "Nobody," Marcus said. "I'm nobody." But they both knew that was a lie. Nobody could do what he'd just done. And somewhere in the forest, Raymond Colt was about to learn that his carefully controlled world had just met a force he couldn't buy, threaten, or intimidate. A Navy SEAL who'd been looking for a reason to fight. He'd just found it. If this story has you on the edge of your seat, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss stories like this. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more incredible true stories of courage and loyalty. Inside the lodge, Marcus sat at Sarah's kitchen table, his hands wrapped around a mug of coffee he wasn't drinking. Every dog in the sanctuary had finally calmed down, their barking replaced by an uneasy quiet. Through the window, he could see Bear lying in his run, still watchful but no longer trembling. Sarah sat across from him, her own mug untouched. She'd watched him take down a man twice in her physical therapist's body weight with clinical efficiency, and now she watched him sit perfectly still, staring at nothing. "Navy SEAL?" she asked quietly. Marcus's jaw tightened. "Does it matter?" "It matters because those men will come back, and next time they won't come to talk." "I know." "So who are you, Marcus Rearden?" "Really?" He looked at her then, and Sarah saw the thing he'd been hiding behind the professional distance and the careful clinical language. She saw the war. "Lieutenant Marcus Rearden, Naval Special Warfare Development Group. 15 years active duty, 6 deployments. Team leader for maritime counterterrorism operations." His voice was flat, reciting facts. 43 days ago, my K9 partner, a Belgian Malinois named Thor, took 3 rounds meant for me during an ambush in Kandahar province. He died saving my life and the lives of 4 other operators. Sarah's hand moved unconsciously to her own leg, to the scars hidden beneath her pants. "I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry." Marcus's voice hardened. "Sorry doesn't bring him back. Sorry doesn't change the fact that I'm here and he's in a box at Arlington. Sorry doesn't—" He stopped, his throat working. "Sorry doesn't mean anything." "No," Sarah said softly. "It doesn't. But you. Being here today, protecting Bear, standing up to men who hurt things weaker than themselves, that means something." Marcus shook his head. "I didn't protect him. I let them hurt him first. Just like I let—" He couldn't finish the sentence. The silence stretched between them, heavy with shared understanding. 2 veterans, 2 survivors, 2 people carrying wounds that would never fully heal. "I had a patient once," Sarah said, "in Afghanistan. A local boy, maybe 14, caught in crossfire. Took shrapnel to the abdomen, femoral artery nicked. I was the only medic close enough. I held pressure on his leg while we waited for the medevac. 20 minutes. He was conscious the whole time, crying for his mother in Pashto." She paused, her eyes distant. "The helicopter came. We got him loaded. They took off. I watched the bird climb, and I thought, I saved him. He's going to be okay. Then an RPG hit the tail rotor. The helicopter went down 2 clicks from our position. No survivors." Marcus waited. "For 2 years," Sarah continued, "I told myself there was nothing I could have done differently, that I'd done everything right. But it didn't matter, because he still died. They all died. 6 people, dead, because I wasn't enough." She met his eyes. "You know what finally helped?" "What?" "Accepting that I couldn't save everyone, that I was never going to save everyone. But I could save someone. So I started saving dogs." She gestured to the window, to the runs and the lodge and the 15 acres of second chances. "Every dog here is alive because I refuse to stop trying. Not because I'm healing from Thor's death or that boy's death. Because I learned to live with it." Marcus's hands clenched on his mug. "I don't know how to do that." "Yes, you do. You just did. You protected Bear. You protected me. That's how it starts. They'll come back with more men. With guns. Then we'll be ready." Sarah's voice turned hard, the voice of a combat medic who'd learned to make impossible decisions under fire. "You said yourself, you're on leave. You're here, in the middle of nowhere, with nothing but time. Help me fight them. I'm not a bodyguard. I'm not. You're a SEAL. You're trained for this. And more than that." She leaned forward, her eyes fierce. "You need this. You need a mission. You need a reason. I'm giving you one." Marcus looked at her for a long moment. He saw the desperation she was trying to hide, the fear that she was about to lose everything she'd built. He saw the stubborn determination that had dragged her back from a career-ending injury and turned her into a sanctuary for broken things. He saw the mission he'd been waiting for. "Tell me everything," he said. "Everything about Raymond Colt, about this development, about the property situation. If I'm going to help you, I need intelligence." Sarah pulled out a laptop and opened a folder she'd been compiling for months. Raymond Colt, 56, CEO of Colt Development Corporation, based in Seattle. He's been buying up land all through this valley for 2 years. So far, he's acquired 20,000 acres through a combination of legitimate purchases and what I can only call aggressive coercion. She pulled up a map showing property lines in red. "My 15 acres are here, right in the center of his planned development. Without my land, his resort doesn't work. The main lodge is supposed to be built right where we're sitting. What about legal options? He owns the lawyers. The local judge plays golf with him. The sheriff's in his pocket. I have documentation proving my property is legally purchased and maintained, but every time I file a complaint, it disappears into bureaucratic limbo." Marcus studied the map, his mind already working tactically. Access routes? One road in and out, and it crosses his property. Legally, I have easement rights, but he could block it and tie me up in court for years. Water? Power? Well, water, documented rights. Solar power with a backup generator. I'm self-sufficient by design. I built this place to be remote. That's good. Makes you harder to pressure. Marcus zoomed in on the topography. Fortifications? Sarah blinked. It's a dog sanctuary, not a military base. It's about to be both. Marcus's voice shifted into command mode, the tone of a man who'd planned and executed operations in hostile territory. Those men today were scouts. They assessed the threat level, and I just elevated it significantly. They'll come back harder. We have maybe 48 hours to prepare. Prepare for what? Siege. He looked at her. Raymond Colt has spent 2 years building his empire. He's not going to let one woman with 15 acres and a bunch of dogs stop him. He'll escalate. More men, more pressure, legal and illegal. He'll try to break you every way he knows how. So what do? Marcus allowed himself a small, cold smile. We turn your sanctuary into a fortress. We document everything. We gather evidence. And we make it so costly for him to push that he has to back down. And if he doesn't back down, then we make him regret ever hearing the name Sarah Vance. For the first time since the men had left, Sarah smiled. It was a warrior's smile, the smile of someone who'd survived hell and refused to be intimidated by anything less. When do we start? Marcus stood, his body language transformed. He was no longer a grief-stricken veteran on medical leave. He was an operator with a mission. Now. First, I need to make a phone call. He pulled out a satellite phone military grade, encrypted. Sarah recognized it immediately. Who are you calling? Back up, Marcus said. I can't do this alone. And I know people who owe me favors. As he dialed, Sarah realized that Raymond Colt had made a fatal miscalculation. He'd thought he was dealing with a disabled veteran and a bunch of dogs. He'd just declared war on a Navy SEAL, and Navy SEALs never fought alone. The call connected after 2 rings. A voice, rough as gravel and twice as hard, answered with a single word, Ghost. Havoc, Marcus said. It's been a while. There was a pause, then a low laugh. 3 months since Kandahar. Heard you were on psych leave, doing PT for broken civvies. Retirement treating you well? I'm not retired, and the leave just got complicated. The laughter stopped. Master Chief Petty Officer Derek Havoc Stone knew that tone. What do you need? Intel package. Subject is Raymond Colt, CEO of Colt Development Corporation, Seattle-based. I need financials, legal history, known associates. Specifically, I need to know if he's connected to anything federal money laundering, racketeering, anything that would give us leverage. How deep? All the way down. I've got 48 hours before this goes hot. Another pause. Marcus could hear the shift in his friend's breathing, the transition from casual conversation to operational planning. This, official? Negative? Personal. Define personal. He's threatening a veteran. She runs a dog rescue. His men hurt one of her dogs today. They'll be back. The silence on the line was profound. Everyone in the unit knew about Thor. Everyone knew what Marcus had been carrying since that day. Dogs? Havoc said quietly. Dogs. You want the intel package, or you want the full team? Marcus's throat tightened. I can't ask for that. You're not asking. I'm offering. Half the team's on leave anyway. Bishop's in Montana. Wraith's in Oregon. I'm in Colorado. We can be in northern Idaho in 8 hours. You give the word. Marcus looked at Sarah, who was watching him with an expression caught between hope and disbelief. He thought about Bear, trembling in his run. He thought about Thor, dying in his arms. He thought about all the things worth protecting in this broken world. Stand by, he said. Let me work the intel first. If this goes sideways, I'll call. We'll be ready. And Ghost? Havoc's voice softened fractionally. It's good to hear you engaged again. Whatever you're protecting, it's worth it. Trust that. The line went dead. Marcus lowered the phone. Sarah was staring at him. You just called in Navy SEALs. Not yet. I called in one for information. The others. He shrugged. They're on standby if we need them. Why would they do that? Come all this way for? She gestured helplessly. For dogs? Marcus met her eyes. Because that's what teams do. We protect each other. And right now, you're part of my team. Outside, the sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of fire and blood. The dogs were settling into their evening routines, unaware of the storm gathering on the horizon. In Seattle, Raymond Colt was receiving a phone call about the incident at the sanctuary. His expression darkened as Wade described the encounter. A physical therapist, he said flatly. You're telling me you were run off by a physical therapist. He wasn't just a physical therapist, Mr. Colt. He moved like, I don't care how he moved. I care that you failed. Again. Raymond ended the call and sat in silence, staring at the map on his wall. One small property, colored in red. The final obstacle. He picked up his phone and made a different call. Mr. Trent? This is Raymond Colt. I have a security situation that requires your particular expertise. Yes? The sanctuary? I need it resolved. Permanently. As he hung up, he smiled. Some problems required a subtle touch, others required overwhelming force. He'd just commissioned the latter. The intel package arrived 6 hours later, transmitted through encrypted channels to Marcus's laptop. Havoc had earned his nickname through years of creating organizational chaos for America's enemies, and his skills hadn't diminished. Marcus and Sarah sat in the lodge's small office, surrounded by sleeping dogs, as they went through the files. What they found was worse than either had expected. Raymond Colt isn't just a developer, Marcus said, his eyes scanning financial records. He's a front. Colt Development Corporation is majority owned by a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands. That company is owned by another shell company in the British Virgin Islands. 3 layers deep, I'm finding connections to a Russian oligarch named Mikhail Volkov. Sarah leaned over his shoulder. I don't understand. Why would a Russian oligarch care about land in Idaho? Money laundering. Look here. Marcus pulled up a series of transactions. Colt Development has been buying land all across the Pacific Northwest, always in remote areas, always paying cash. They do minimal development, then sell to another shell company at inflated prices. It's a classic laundering operation. They're cleaning dirty money through American real estate. And my property is right in the middle of their biggest project. Exactly. The resort is real. They need it to be real, to justify the money moving through. But you're blocking $20 million in investment capital that needs to be laundered before the end of the fiscal year. You're not just an inconvenience, Sarah. You're a threat to their entire operation. Sarah's face paled. So they'll kill me. They'll try. Marcus pulled up another file. But this also means we have leverage. Havoc dug deep enough to find FBI interest. There's an ongoing investigation into Volkov's American operations. It's been quiet, working through financial crimes, but they'd love to have a solid witness and physical evidence of criminal activity. You want me to testify? I want you alive. Testifying is a bonus. Marcus stood, pacing. But first, we need to survive the next 48 hours. After that phone call Colt made, he's not sending Wade and Dale back. He's sending professionals. How do you know he made a call? Marcus gave her a flat look. Because it's what I would do. He just learned his property's security was compromised by an unknown hostile. He's escalating. The only question is how much. The answer came sooner than expected. At 3:47 a.m., Bear started barking. Not his usual alert bark, this was primal, terrified. Every dog in the sanctuary joined in within seconds, a cacophony of warning that shattered the mountain silence. Marcus was awake and armed before his conscious mind registered the threat. He'd been sleeping in his clothes, his sidearm within reach. Years of training made his movements automatic. Weapon check, assess environment, identify threat vector. Sarah stumbled out of her room, her leg brace half fastened. What's happening? Stay inside, away from windows. Marcus was already moving to the main door, using the frame as cover while he scanned the darkness. Nothing. No vehicles. No lights. But Bear was still barking, his body pressed against the fence of his run, staring into the forest to the northeast. Then Marcus saw it. Thermal imagery would have shown 4 heat. Signatures. But with the naked eye, he caught just the faintest movement. Shadows detaching from shadows. Multiple hostiles advancing with tactical spacing through the tree line. Professional. Marcus's mind raced through calculations. 4 men, probably armed, definitely trained. Rules of engagement unclear. Were they here to intimidate or to kill? His rules of engagement were crystal clear. Protect Sarah, protect the dogs, use minimum necessary force. Minimum necessary against 4 armed men was still going to be significant. He pulled out his satellite phone and hit speed dial. Havoc answered on the first ring. Going hot, Marcus said. 4 hostiles advancing from the northeast. I need overwatch, and I need it now. We're 8 minutes out. Bishop called it 3 hours ago when we saw Colt make that phone call. We've been staging in town. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. His team, his brothers, coming through when it mattered. 8 minutes, he repeated. Copy. I'll keep them busy. He ended the call and turned to Sarah. Get to the cellar. Take Maggie and Luna. Lock the door. Don't come out until I give the all clear. Marcus. Now, Sarah, this is what I'm trained for. She nodded, her combat medic instincts overriding her fear. She gathered the 2 dogs and disappeared into the cellar entrance, hidden behind the walk-in pantry. Marcus turned back to the windows. The shadows were closer now, maybe 50 yards out. Moving with professional discipline, one team providing cover while another advanced. Standard small unit tactics. He couldn't let them reach the lodge. Too many angles, too many vulnerabilities. He needed to take the fight to them. Marcus slipped out the back door, using the darkness and his intimate knowledge of the property to navigate silently toward the kennels. The dogs were still barking, providing audio cover for his movement. He positioned himself behind a large water tank that serviced the outdoor runs, giving him a field of fire across the main approach. The first hostile stepped into the clear near Bear's Run. Marcus could see him now in the faint starlight tactical vest, suppressed rifle, night vision goggles. Definitely professional. The man raised his weapon toward Bear's kennel. Marcus didn't hesitate. He fired twice, suppressed rounds from his own weapon, both shots aimed at center mass. The man went down hard. Immediately, the forest erupted with return fire. Suppressed rounds snapped through the air, punching through wood and chain link. The dogs went crazy, scrambling for cover in their shelters. Marcus dropped flat, rolling to a new position as rounds chewed up the space where he'd been standing. 3 left. They knew his position now. Time to move. He belly-crawled through the mud toward the maintenance shed, using the kennels as cover. More rounds tracked him, but the shooters were firing blind. Their night vision was good, but Marcus was better. 20 years of operating in hostile territory had taught him how to become invisible. He reached the shed and slipped inside, using the back window to reacquire his targets. 2 hostiles were advancing on his last position, moving with aggressive confidence. The third was hanging back, providing overwatch. Classic 3-man assault pattern, which meant the first man wasn't dead, he was wounded and out of the fight, somewhere in the darkness, bleeding and probably calling for extraction. Marcus lined up his shot on the nearest hostile. But before he could fire, a new sound cut through the chaos. The distinctive supersonic crack of a high-powered rifle followed immediately by the thump of impact. The hostile on Overwatch went down. Overwatch in position. Havoc's voice came through Marcus's earpiece. I count 2 hostiles still mobile, northeast quadrant. You're clear to engage. Marcus grinned in the darkness. 8 minutes, his ass. Havoc had been closer than he'd admitted. Copy. Engaging. The 2 remaining hostiles realized they'd lost their Overwatch. They were professionals, but professionals knew when a fight had turned. They began a tactical retreat, laying down suppressing fire as they pulled back toward the tree line. Marcus let them go. The mission wasn't to kill, it was to protect. They'd done that. Hold fire, he ordered. Let them run. Confirmed. Hostiles are retreating. I'm tracking them with thermal. They've got a vehicle staged half a click out. 5 minutes later, Marcus heard the sound of an engine roaring to life, then fading into the distance. The sanctuary fell silent, except for the anxious whimpering of dogs. Marcus stayed in position for another 10 minutes, scanning for threats, before finally keying his radio. All clear. Sarah, you can come up. Sarah emerged from the cellar, her face pale but composed. She looked at the damaged bullet holes in the kennel walls, splintered wood, shattered glass. They tried to kill us, she said quietly. No, Marcus corrected. They tried to kill me. They tried to scare you. Big difference. Will they come back? Yes, but next time we'll be ready. Headlights appeared on the access road. Not the hostile vehicle returning, this was a convoy, 3 trucks, moving fast. Marcus recognized the lead vehicle. That's my team. The trucks skidded to a stop, and 5 men deployed with military precision. They moved like shadows, securing the perimeter in seconds. Finally, one of them approached the lodge, a mountain of a man with a shaved head and eyes like blue ice. Master Chief Derek Stone, reporting as requested. Havoc said with a slight smile. I believe you have a situation that needs resolving. Behind him, 4 other operators had taken up defensive positions around the property. Bishop, the team's sniper, was already climbing into an elevated position in a large pine. Wraith, their communications specialist, was setting up a mobile command post in one of the trucks. Forge and Blade, the team's breachers and close-quarters specialists, were doing a damage assessment on the kennels. Sarah stared at them in disbelief. You actually came, ma'am? Havoc said with a nod. Ghost is our brother. His fight is our fight. Always has been. Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in months, a loosening of the weight that had been crushing his chest since Kandahar. His team, his family, here. All right. he said, his voice carrying the authority of 1,000 operations. "Let's fortify this position and figure out our next move. Raymond Colt just escalated to attempted murder. We're not playing defense anymore." "What are we playing?" Sarah asked. Marcus's smile was cold and precise. "Offense. It's time to take the fight to him." Raymond Colt received the call at 4:30 a.m. The voice on the other end was strained, speaking quickly. "Mr. Colt, we have a problem." Trent's team was engaged and repelled. One casualty, Rodriguez, took 2 rounds to the vest, broken ribs but stable. The target site was defended by multiple hostiles with military-grade weapons and training. "We're aborting the operation." Raymond felt his careful control slip for the first time in years. "Multiple hostiles?" The intelligence said, 1 man and a crippled woman. "Intelligence was wrong, sir. We counted at least 6 defenders, professional-level response, coordinated overwatch. This isn't some veteran with a dog rescue. This is a fortified position with trained operators." "Who?" "Unknown. But Trent's pulling his men. He says the contract's void. You didn't disclose military presence. He wants his deposit back." Raymond ended the call and sat in his dark office, staring at nothing. His entire development, 2 years of planning, millions in laundered capital, all blocked by 15 acres of land, defended by who? He opened his laptop and began searching. Doctor. Sarah Vance. Army medic, medical discharge, no family, no connections. But what about the physical therapist? It took him 22 minutes to find it, buried in VA contractor records. Marcus Rearden. Listed occupation, traveling physical therapist for rural veterans. But cross-referenced with military databases, sealed, classified, redacted. That seal could only mean one thing. Raymond picked up his phone and called the only person who might have answers. A retired Army colonel named Patterson, who owed him favors and had connections in the special operations community. Patterson. "It's Colt. I need identification on a person of interest. Name is Marcus Rearden, approximately 34. Former Navy, stop." Patterson's voice went cold. "Don't finish that sentence. Whatever you're involved in with Marcus Rearden, uninvolve yourself immediately. I just need to know." "No, you need to listen. Marcus Ghost Rearden is Naval Special Warfare Development Group. That's DevGru Colt. That's SEAL Team 6. He's not just special operations, he's the Tier 1 guys they send when conventional special operations fail. And if he's in your area, you have a problem you cannot solve with money or lawyers." Raymond felt ice water in his veins. "How do I?" "You don't. You walk away. You take your losses, and you never go near that property again. Because if you escalate against a DevGru operator, you won't be dealing with local law enforcement or even the FBI. You'll be dealing with a community that protects its own with extreme prejudice." The line went dead. Raymond sat in silence as the sun began to rise over Seattle. His perfect plan, his carefully constructed empire, threatened by 1 woman and 1 SEAL. No, not acceptable. He made one more call, this time to a number he'd sworn never to use. The number that connected him directly to Volkov's security apparatus. The number that meant involving the kind of people who didn't recognize the rule of law. "Mr. Volkov needs to know there's a problem with the Idaho project," Raymond said when the call connected. "We have military interference." "Yes, I'll hold." 3 minutes later, a different voice came on the line, accented, calm, terrifying in its pleasantness. "Mr. Colt, I understand you have encountered difficulties." "Describe them." Raymond explained the situation, trying to keep his voice steady. The man listened without interruption. When Raymond finished, there was a long pause. "A Navy SEAL," the voice finally said. "How inconvenient. But not insurmountable. We have resources for such complications. A team will be dispatched from our Vancouver operations. They will arrive in 36 hours. Your instructions are to monitor the property, maintain surveillance, and do nothing else. When our team arrives, this problem will be resolved permanently." "What kind of team?" The kind that has resolved similar problems in Chechnya, in Syria, in places where American special forces operate with impunity. The kind that specializes in making SEALs disappear. The call ended. Raymond should have felt relief. Instead, he felt the first cold finger of genuine fear. He'd just involved Russian intelligence operatives in a domestic operation on American soil. There was no walking this back. Either the SEAL and the woman died, or Raymond would, because Volkov didn't tolerate loose ends. At the sanctuary, Marcus was briefing his team on the tactical situation when Wraith called out from the command post. "Ghost, we've got intercepts. Encrypted call from Seattle to a Vancouver number. Canadian intelligence flagged it as a known Russian SVR relay. They're bringing in foreign operators." Marcus felt the shift in the room. His team understood immediately this had just gone from a local conflict to something much larger. "How many?" Havoc asked. "Unknown. But if they're calling in SVR assets, we're looking at Spetsnaz trained, probably ex-GRU. They'll come hard, and they'll come to kill." Sarah was standing in the doorway, listening. "What does that mean?" Marcus turned to face her. "It means Raymond Colt just made the biggest mistake of his life. He brought Russian intelligence operatives onto U.S. soil to conduct an illegal operation against American citizens. That's not just a crime, that's an act that'll bring down every federal agency from the FBI to the CIA. But in the meantime, they're coming to kill us." "Yes," Marcus said. "But here's what Colt doesn't understand. He just turned a personal fight into a national security issue. And we're not defending anymore, Sarah. We're gathering evidence for the biggest federal case this state has seen in decades." Havoc grinned, savage and fierce. "Finally, a real mission." Marcus looked at his team, at Sarah, at the sanctuary full of dogs who deserved protection. "We hold this position, we document everything. And when those Russian operators arrive, we give them exactly what they deserve." "What's that?" Sarah asked. "A very painful lesson in why you don't threaten American veterans on American soil." The war was about to begin. The next 30 hours transformed. Second Chance, K-9 Sanctuary, from a peaceful rescue operation into a fortified defensive position. Marcus's team worked with ruthless efficiency, using their combined decades of experience to turn Sarah's property into a nightmare for any attacking force. Bishop, the team sniper, established 3 separate overwatch positions in the surrounding trees, each with clear fields of fire and concealed egress routes. He could move between them unseen, making any hostile force think they were facing multiple snipers. Wraith set up a comprehensive electronic surveillance system, motion sensors, thermal cameras, directional microphones. Every approach to the property was monitored. He also established encrypted communications with friendly assets in the FBI and CIA, feeding them real-time intelligence on the developing situation. Forge and Blade reinforced the lodge itself, turning it into a hardpoint. Steel plates covered windows, firing positions were cut into walls, and emergency escape routes were established. The building could withstand sustained assault while protecting everyone inside. But the most important task fell to Marcus and Sarah. Securing the dogs. "We can't leave them in the outdoor runs," Marcus said, studying the layout. "They're too exposed. If shooting starts, they'll be in the line of fire." Sarah's face was tight with worry. "The lodge isn't big enough for all 17 dogs. Then we use the cabins. We move the most vulnerable into the main lodge, with you, Luna, Maggie, any dog that can't handle stress. The others go into the reinforced cabins with team members for protection. They spent hours moving dogs, using calm voices and gentle hands despite the urgency. Bear went with Havoc, the big German Shepherd, immediately bonding with the massive Seal. The working breeds went with Forge and Blade. The elderly and traumatized dogs stayed with Sarah in the lodge. As they worked, Marcus noticed Sarah moving more smoothly despite her limp. She was in her element, protecting her animals, working with purpose. The fear was still there, but it was controlled, channeled into productive action. "You're good at this." Marcus said as they settled Luna into a quiet corner with her blanket and favorite toy. Combat medic training. Triage. Prioritize. Execute. Sarah's hands were gentle on Luna's head. These dogs are my patients. My mission. I won't let anything happen to them. You won't have to. Marcus knelt beside her. My team has done this before, protected civilians in hostile territory. We're good at it, Sarah. Trust us. She looked at him, and he saw the question in her eyes. After this is over, after we win, if we win, what happens to you? What do you mean? You're on medical leave. You came here to hide from your grief. Now you're planning a military operation on U.S. soil against Russian operatives. This isn't healing, Marcus. This is just more war. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Maybe war is all I know. Maybe it's all I'm good for. I don't believe that. Sarah's voice was firm. You're good at protecting things. That's different than war. War is about destroying. What you're doing here, that's about preserving, creating, defending something worth defending. Before Marcus could respond, Wraith's voice crackled over the radio. All stations, we have movement. 2 vehicles just past the town limits, heading this way. ETA, 15 minutes. Marcus stood, his face transforming into the mask of a warrior. Get to the lodge. Stay with the dogs. No matter what happens, stay down. Marcus, this is what I do, Sarah. Let me do it. He left her there, surrounded by scared dogs who sensed the coming storm, and joined his team in the darkness. The Russians were coming. The sanctuary was ready. The 2 vehicles didn't come to the sanctuary. They stopped 3 miles away at a hunting cabin Raymond Colt owned, and Wraith's surveillance caught everything. 6 men, Wraith, reported. His screens showing thermal imagery and long-range video, moving with professional discipline, setting up a forward operating base. I'm picking up Russian communications on encrypted frequencies. Marcus studied the feed. The men were professional ex-military, probably Spetsnaz as predicted. They were establishing overwatch, running reconnaissance, treating this like a military operation, which meant they'd scout before they struck. How long? Havoc asked. They'll want daylight for recon, Bishop said from his position. They'll glass the property, identify defensive positions, look for patterns. Professional team won't hit blind. We've got maybe 24 hours. Marcus made a decision. Wraith, I need you to tap their communications. Everything they say gets recorded and transmitted to our FBI contacts. I want documentation of foreign operatives conducting hostile surveillance on U.S. citizens. Already on it, Wraith confirmed. Also pulling satellite imagery of their movements since they crossed the border. We'll have a complete record of their deployment. Good. Marcus turned to Havoc. We're not waiting for them to attack. We're going to make them show their hand. What do you have in mind? Sarah and I are going into town, publicly. We're going to file a formal complaint with the sheriff about the attack 2 nights ago. We're going to be loud and visible. Sarah, who'd been listening from the lodge doorway, stepped forward. You want to use us as bait. I want to force them to make a move in a place where there are witnesses. If they're going to try something, I'd rather it happen on Main Street than out here where nobody sees. And you think the sheriff will help? Raymond Colt owns him. I'm counting on it. Marcus's smile was cold. Because when the sheriff refuses to help a veteran who's being threatened, and when Russian operatives make their move in full view of a town's security cameras, we'll have everything we need. 2 hours later, Marcus and Sarah walked into the Timber Ridge Sheriff's Department. The building was small, brick, with that peculiar smell of old coffee and older paperwork that seemed to permeate every rural law enforcement office. Sheriff Thomas Brackett looked up from his desk. He was 50-something, with a gut that spoke of too many years behind that desk and not enough time in the field. His expression when he saw them was carefully neutral. Dr. Vance. How can I help you? Sarah placed a folder on his desk. I'm filing a formal complaint. 2 nights ago, armed men attacked my property. Multiple rounds were fired, property was damaged, and my life was threatened. I have photographs, shell casings, and medical documentation of the earlier assault by Raymond Colt's employees. Brackett didn't open the folder. That's a serious accusation. You have proof these men worked for Mr. Colt? We have their vehicle registration, photographic evidence, and testimony from. Sarah glanced at Marcus. Marcus Rearden, Marcus said, his voice flat. I'm Dr. Vance's physical therapist. I witnessed both incidents. Brackett's eyes narrowed slightly. Physical therapist? That's your occupation? Among other things. The sheriff leaned back in his chair. Dr. Vance, I understand you're under stress. Running that sanctuary can't be easy. But Mr. Colt is a respected businessman. Making accusations without solid evidence, the evidence is in the folder, Sarah said, her voice hardening. Are you refusing to investigate? I'm saying I'll look into it, but these things take time. Can't just go accusing people. I can and I am. Raymond Colt is trying to force me off my land through intimidation and violence. If you won't help, I'll go to the state police. And the FBI. That got a reaction. Brackett's face tightened. Now there's no need for that. I'll handle this locally. Give me a few days. You have 48 hours, Marcus said quietly. After that, this stops being a local matter. Outside, as they walked back to Marcus's truck, Sarah was shaking with suppressed fury. He's not going to do anything. Colt owns him. I know. That was the point. Marcus nodded toward a security camera mounted on the bank across the street. We now have documented proof that local law enforcement is refusing to investigate. Wraith's pulling the footage as we speak. They climbed into the truck. As Marcus started the engine, Wraith's voice came through his earpiece. Ghost, we've got movement. The Russians are mobilizing. They're heading toward town. How many? 4 men, 2 vehicles. They're armed, but trying to stay concealed. Looks like they're planning to intercept you on the route back to the sanctuary. Marcus glanced at Sarah. They took the bait. Havoc, status? In position. Havoc's voice was calm. We've got overwatch on the likely ambush points. Bishop has the high ground. Blade and Forge are ready for rapid response. Copy. We're moving to Route 12, northern route. Let's see how they play this. As they drove out of town, Marcus explained the situation. Sarah's knuckles were white on the armrest. You're using us to draw them out. I'm using us to catch them in an actionable offense on U.S. soil. There's a difference. Marcus's eyes were constantly scanning mirrors and sightlines. When they make their move, we'll have every second documented. FBI will have no choice but to act. They were 3 miles out of town, on a stretch of road bordered by dense forest. When it happened, a car pulled out from a logging road ahead, blocking the highway. 2 men got out, weapons poorly concealed under jackets. Another vehicle pulled in behind them, the classic vehicular ambush. Marcus stopped the truck, his hand moving to his concealed weapon. Stay in the vehicle. Get down. The men approached from both sides. Through the window, Marcus could hear accented English. Mr. Rearden, you will step out of vehicle. You will come with us. The woman also. On whose authority? Marcus kept his hands visible, his voice calm. You do not ask questions. You come now, or we take you. Marcus made eye contact with the speaker. You're Russian Spetsnaz, probably GRU. You're on U.S. soil conducting an illegal operation. You have about 30 seconds before this becomes an international incident. The man smiled. You are alone. We are 6. There will be no incident. Only unfortunate accident on Mountain Road. 6? You're down to 4. I count 4 of you. The man's smile faltered. He keyed a radio, speaking rapid Russian. No response, because Bishop had already taken down the 2 men in the follow vehicle with tranquilizer rounds non-lethal, but instantaneous. They were unconscious in their seats, weapons secured. The man's expression changed from confidence to calculation. His hand moved toward his weapon. I wouldn't, Marcus said softly. You're being recorded by multiple agencies. You draw that weapon, and you'll spend the rest of your life in a federal prison explaining why Russian intelligence operatives tried to kidnap American citizens. You are bluffing. Am I? Marcus smiled. Check your 6. The man turned. Standing on the road behind them, having approached with absolute silence, was Havoc. His weapon was raised, trained center mass. In the trees above, barely visible, Bishop had a rifle scope trained on the second man. The Russians were professionals. They recognized a superior tactical position when they saw it. We are leaving, the speaker said. This is mistake. We are tourists, lost. Tourists with diplomatic immunity and Russian military training, Marcus said. No. You're not leaving. You're going to set your weapons on the ground, very slowly, and then you're going to wait while we call some friends. You cannot arrest us. We have. I don't need to arrest you. That's what they're for. 4 unmarked SUVs roared up from both directions, disgorging FBI agents in tactical gear. The Russian operatives were secured, weapons confiscated, rights read in English and Russian. Special Agent Jennifer Marks approached Marcus's truck, her ID held high. Mr. Rearden, Doctor. Vance, I'm Agent Marks, FBI Counterintelligence. We've been monitoring this situation for the past 18 hours. You're both safe now. Sarah looked at Marcus. You coordinated this with the FBI. Wraith coordinated it. I just provided the opportunity. Marcus climbed out of the truck. Agent Marks, those men are Russian intelligence operatives. They were attempting abduction on U.S. soil on behalf of Raymond Colt and his associates. We have documentation of everything, the money laundering operation, Colt's connection to Mikhail Volkov, the deployment of foreign operatives. We know. Marks smiled thinly. We've been building a case against Volkov's American operations for 2 years. You just handed us the last piece we needed, direct action by his operatives. Mr. Colt's arrest warrant is being 15 FRH, executed as we speak. In Seattle, Raymond Colt was in his office when the door burst open. Federal agents flooded in, weapons drawn, shouting commands. He was face down on his expensive carpet, hands zip-tied behind his back, before he fully processed what was happening. Raymond Colt, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, solicitation of foreign agents, money laundering, and violation of the Foreign Agents Registration Act. You have the right to remain silent. His empire, built over decades, collapsed in minutes. Back at the sanctuary, Sarah stood on the porch watching the sunset. The property was still secured by Marcus's team, but the threat was over. The Russians were in federal custody. Colt was arrested. His development company was frozen pending investigation. She'd won. Marcus found her there, standing alone. How are you doing? I don't know, she admitted. For 2 years I've been fighting just to keep this place open. Now it's over, and I don't know what to feel. Feel relief. You earned it. They stood in comfortable silence, watching as Havoc played fetch with Bear in the yard. The big German shepherd was bounding around, his earlier trauma forgotten in the joy of the game. What happens now? Sarah asked. To you, I mean. Do you go back to your unit? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. My leave isn't up for months. And I realized something while we were fighting. I wasn't fighting because I had to. I was fighting because I wanted to. Because this place, these dogs, you, it's worth protecting. That's different than orders. That's purpose. Sarah looked at him. You could stay. I could use a full-time security consultant, someone who knows how to deal with threats. You planning on making more enemies? No, but I'm planning on expanding. More dogs. More space. More saved lives. She smiled. I could use help. Marcus felt something unfamiliar in his chest, not the crushing weight of grief, but something lighter. Hope, maybe. Purpose. I'll think about it, he said. But they both knew he'd already decided. In the yard, Havoc threw the ball one more time. Bear caught it mid-air, his tail wagging furiously. A dog who'd been hurt, who'd been traumatized, who'd found safety and love and a second chance, just like Marcus. Just like all of them. The FBI's case against Raymond Colt and his associates unraveled the largest Russian money laundering operation in Pacific Northwest history. The evidence Marcus's team had gathered, combined with the FBI's years-long investigation, created an airtight prosecution. Raymond Colt, facing life in federal prison, accepted a plea deal. He would testify against Mikhail Volkov and his entire network in exchange for a reduced sentence of 20 years without possibility of parole. His development company was dissolved, assets seized, and every acre of land he'd fraudulently acquired was returned to its original owners or put up for legitimate sale. Wade Riggs and Dale Mosser were charged with assault, trespassing, animal cruelty, and conspiracy. They received 5 years each. The Russian operatives were deported after serving reduced sentences in exchange for intelligence cooperation. Timber Ridge Sheriff Thomas Brackett resigned under federal investigation. His replacement, a former state police investigator named Maria Santos, had zero tolerance for corruption and immediately began rebuilding trust with the community. But the most significant justice came 3 months later in a small courtroom in Timber Ridge. Sarah Vance stood at the plaintiff's table, her leg brace hidden under professional slacks, her shoulders straight with dignity. Across from her, Raymond Colt, diminished in an orange jumpsuit. His expensive haircut, now just bad prison barber, refused to meet her eyes. "Mr. Colt?" Judge Anderson said, her voice carrying the weight of 30 years on the bench. "You attempted to destroy a woman's life and livelihood to serve your greed. You deployed violence, intimidation, and foreign intelligence operatives against a disabled American veteran. Do you have anything to say?" Colt's lawyer had advised silence. But Colt, his empire gone, his reputation destroyed, couldn't help himself. That property was worth $20 million. She was standing in the way of progress. I offered her fair compensation, more than fair. She was unreasonable. She exercised her legal right to keep her property. You responded with terrorism. Judge Anderson's expression was granite. This court awards Dr. Sarah Vance compensatory damages in the amount of $5 million to be paid from your seized assets. Additionally, punitive damages of $15 million to be paid from the liquidation of Colt Development Corporation. Sarah gasped. $20 million. Enough to expand the sanctuary 100 times over. Enough to save thousands of dogs. Furthermore, the judge continued, your remaining land holdings in this county will be sold at auction, with right of first refusal given to Dr. Vance and a conservation trust we're establishing. Your legacy, Mr. Colt, will be protecting the very wilderness you sought to destroy. Colt's face went white. Justice, Sarah thought, sometimes looks like an elderly judge with reading glasses and an absolute commitment to what's right. Outside the courthouse, media had gathered. Sarah gave a brief statement, thanking the FBI, local law enforcement, and the brave veterans who stood with me when I needed help most. Marcus stood in the background, uncomfortable with the attention, but Havoc clapped him on the shoulder. You did good, Ghost. Gave you a reason to come back. I'm not back. I'm still on leave. Sure you are. Havoc grinned. That's why you're already talking to the VA about taking a permanent assignment as the sanctuary's on-site security and veterans rehabilitation coordinator. Totally still on leave. Marcus couldn't help but smile. It's a good mission. The best missions usually are. That evening, Sarah held a celebration at the sanctuary. The whole town came the people who'd quietly sabotaged Colt's equipment, who'd accidentally delayed shipments, who'd passed along information to anyone who would listen. They'd been the silent resistance, and now they gathered to celebrate their victory. Marcus's team was there too, though they'd leave in the morning. Their work was done, their brother had found his purpose, and they were happy for him. Sheriff Santos came, promising better protection and actual law enforcement. This county is done being a playground for rich criminals, she announced, to applause. But the real celebration was quieter, happening in the dog runs, where 17 rescued animals, now 19, as 2 more had arrived that week, were playing, sleeping, and living without fear. Bear had found a forever home with Havoc, who'd fallen completely in love with the gentle giant. "He's retiring to Colorado with me," Havoc explained to anyone who asked. "Gonna teach him how to hike mountains and intimidate my neighbors." Luna, after months of rehabilitation, had finally come out of her shell completely. She was playing with a new arrival, a young shepherd mix who'd been found abandoned on the roadside. Maggie, the elderly lab, had passed peacefully in her sleep 2 weeks after the attack, surrounded by love. Sarah had buried her under an oak tree with full honors. "She lived her last years happy," Marcus had said. That's all any of us can ask for. Now, watching the celebration, watching the town come together, watching the dogs play, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt since before Thor died. Peace. Not the absence of war, the presence of purpose. He'd come to Idaho to hide from his grief. Instead, he'd found a reason to live with it. 3 days after the trial, Marcus stood in the forest clearing where Sarah had first encountered Raymond, Colt's men. But today he wasn't alone. He'd driven 6 hours to bring Thor's ashes home from the military cemetery. It had taken special permission, paperwork, and conversations with command that had been harder than he'd expected. "He deserves to rest somewhere beautiful," Marcus had said. Somewhere he'd be protecting something important. They'd granted permission. Now, with Sarah beside him and all 17 sanctuary dogs sitting in a respectful semicircle, a minor miracle of training, Marcus opened the ceremonial urn. Thor was a Belgian Malinois, Marcus said, his voice rough. 75 pounds of pure loyalty and courage. He was 3 years old when they paired us. I'd never worked with animals before. They said we'd be a bad match. I was too closed off, too by the book. Thor was too energetic, too independent. He smiled at the memory. They were right. We were terrible together at first. But we figured it out. We learned each other's signals. We became a team. Sarah stood quietly, letting him speak. Thor saved my life 7 times that I can document, probably more that I don't even know about. He detected IEDs, tracked insurgents, guarded wounded teammates during evacuations. He did his job perfectly, every single time. Marcus's throat tightened. And the one time I needed to protect him, the one time it mattered most, I failed. I didn't see the sniper. I didn't react fast enough. Thor took 3 rounds meant for me. He died in my arms, and I couldn't do anything to save him. Marcus, Sarah started. But here's what I've learned, Marcus continued. Thor didn't die because I failed. He died doing what he was born to do, protecting his pack. That was his purpose, his mission. And hating myself for his death, hiding from it, that dishonors him more than anything else ever could. He scattered some of the ashes under a towering pine. So I'm laying him to rest here, in a place he'd love, where he'll always be protecting something important, where other dogs get second chances because someone cared enough to fight for them. He emptied the urn, then placed it at the base of the tree. Sarah had already prepared a marker, a simple bronze plaque that read, Thor, military working, dog faithful partner, brave protector, loyal friend. His mission continues in every life saved. Here, thank you, Marcus said to Sarah, for giving him this, for giving me this. You gave it to yourself, Sarah replied. You chose to fight. You chose to protect. You chose purpose over grief. Thor would be proud. The dogs, as if understanding the solemnity of the moment, remained quiet. Even Bear, usually energetic, sat still and watchful. Marcus knelt and ran his hand over the freshly turned earth. Rest easy, buddy. I've got it from here. As they walked back to the lodge, Sarah slipped her hand into Marcus's. It was the first physical contact between them that wasn't therapeutic or tactical. I've been thinking about your job offer, Marcus said. And? I want to expand it, not just security. I want to start a program, military working dogs who retire with PTSD or injuries. Give them a place to heal, just like you do for other rescues. And veterans who need purpose, like me, give them work with the dogs. Rehabilitation for both. Sarah stopped walking. Marcus, that's brilliant. But the funding, I have money from my military service, no family to spend it on, and your settlement from Colt can help. We can make this work. He looked at her intently. If you'll have me, not as a contractor or a temporary hire, as a partner in the mission. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. A partner in the mission? Maybe more than just the mission, Marcus said quietly. If you're willing. Sarah answered by pulling him close and kissing him gentle at first, then deeper, filled with all the unspoken emotions of the past months. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. Welcome home, Marcus Rearden, Sarah whispered. Yeah, Marcus said, looking around at the sanctuary, at the dogs, at the woman who'd given him back his purpose. Home. 6 months later, Second Chance K9 Sanctuary held its official grand reopening. The property had expanded to 30 acres, with new facilities specifically designed for military working dog rehabilitation. The ribbon-cutting ceremony drew a crowd. Sheriff Santos, FBI Agent Marks, veterans from 3 states, and Marcus's entire SEAL team, now regular volunteers at the sanctuary. But the real stars were the dogs. Bear, now officially Havoc's service dog, demonstrated basic obedience. Luna, fully rehabilitated, was being adopted by a family with 2 gentle children who'd promised to love her forever. And 3 new arrivals, military working dogs retired due to injury, were settling into their new home. Marcus stood at the podium, uncomfortable with public speaking, but determined to honor the mission. We started this place on a simple principle, he said. Every dog deserves a second chance. Every veteran deserves a purpose. What we've learned is that healing isn't something you do alone. It's something you do together. He gestured to Sarah, who stood beside him. Dr. Vance built this sanctuary with her own hands and her own will. She refused to give up when powerful people tried to break her. She proved that one person with purpose is stronger than an army motivated by greed. Applause rippled through the crowd. But this isn't just about saving dogs, Marcus continued. It's about saving each other. Every veteran who works here is healing. Every dog that finds a home is saving a family. Every person who stands up against injustice like this town did makes the world a little bit better. He looked directly at the audience. You don't have to be a Navy SEAL to be a protector. You just have to care enough to act, to stand up when someone's being hurt, to refuse to look away when something's wrong, to be brave enough to do the right thing even when it's hard. Sarah took the microphone. We're opening our volunteer program today. We need people to work with the dogs, help with property maintenance, spread the word about adoption. But more than that, we need witnesses, people who see injustice and refuse to accept it, people who believe that every life, human or animal, has value worth protecting. She paused. Raymond Colt tried to destroy this place because he valued profit over life. He lost because a community decided that wasn't acceptable. You won this. Your refusal to be intimidated, your quiet acts of resistance, your willingness to stand with us when it mattered. That's real heroism. The ceremony ended with the release of dozens of balloons, each one carrying the name of a dog the sanctuary had saved. As they rose into the Idaho sky, Marcus felt Thor's presence not as grief, but as gratitude. He'd found his way forward by protecting others, by choosing purpose over pain. The mission continues, Thor. Every day, every dog, every life saved. And in the mountain wind, he could almost hear the answer. Good boy. Now keep going. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to be reminded that heroes still exist. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and let us know in the comments, what was your favorite moment? Was it the K9's loyalty, the SEAL's protection, or the moment justice was served? We read every comment. God bless, and see you in the next story.